Alright, let's check out Plonk. Plonk is a physical modeling module that was developed in collaboration with Applied Acoustics. You might know Applied Acoustics from their software instruments like Chromophone, Tasman, Ultra Analog, and String Studio, or you might have used the instruments they help make for Ableton Live like Tension, Analog, and Collision. If you haven't checked out their stuff, you definitely should. Physical modeling is a type of synthesis that mimics the behavior of acoustic objects. And in the case of Plonk, it does this with an exciter and an object. And so the exciter you can think of as the drumstick. It's the part that initiates the sound. And the object you can think of as the drum itself. It's the body that resonates, that shapes the resulting sound. So let's see how Plonk sounds. So we can use the red trigger button to trigger whatever sound we have loaded. And if we hit the load button, we can scroll through the sounds and you can hear that Plonk has a pretty big range. And if you don't load a sound and leave it for a bit, it'll go back to whatever sound you had loaded. If we want to load a sound, you just tap the encoder there and that will load it as the current sound. So you'll notice as I'm auditioning these sounds, the controls are affecting those sounds. And they will also respond to any CV inputs that you have going on as well. So when Plonk receives a trigger, either from hitting the button or using a gate or trigger signal sent to the trig input, the red LED lights up, but also these yellow LEDs light up. And these are to indicate the two-voice polyphony of Plonk, meaning that if a gate is received while a note is still ringing out, a second voice can play a second overlapping note. So if you make a new preset, you can easily save it just by hitting the save button, scrolling to the slot that you want to overwrite, and you can either hit the save button again to use the same name, or you can hit the encoder and put in a new name for that preset. And if you want to exit this, you can just hit any button to exit out of it. The pitch button, you can use the pitch button to tune whatever sound you have selected, and you'll notice right now it's displaying an actual note value. If you don't want it to be quantized to a chromatic scale, you can turn quantizing off. And then you'll see the pitch in numerical values. You can also change the root octave. If the pitch is at 12 o'clock, that will play that root note. You can toggle between selecting menus and editing parameters either by using the encoder or pressing the respective menu button. So let's load a blank patch here and get to know what Plonk does. So first of all, we'll look at the exciter section here. Plonk's exciter is made up of two elements, mallet and noise, and you're able to blend between those two elements on this mallet noise parameter. So right now it's just being excited by noise, and right now it's just being excited by the mallet. And then if we scroll through these various parameters, we can see that we can change the stiffness of the mallet. So by changing the stiffness of the mallet, you can get different responses. And then you have options to shape your noise. So if we go back to that noise mallet ratio, let's bring that all the way to noise. And then if we go to our noise attack, so we can have the noise swell in more slowly. So we can use that to get more bowed sounds, and we can adjust the noise decay. And we can change the density of that noise too. So with high noise density, it'll be pretty dense regular white noise. But with low density, it becomes more of a collection of clicks. And then you have a low-pass filter with resonance and a high-pass filter with resonance. And then you have the option to use an envelope to shape the amplitude of that noise. And you can choose whether that envelope is an attack and release envelope or an attack hold release envelope that will sustain while the gate is high. And let's just load that preset back. Next, we have the ability to change the object that's being excited. And so you can choose between 6 different types. We have string, beam, marimba, drumhead, and plate. So those will have a large impact on how Plonk sounds. And then you can adjust the decay of that object, the tone or material of the object, the inharmonicity, so this is controlling the spacing of the partials. The position, so this is where the object's being struck. So 0 is the edge. And 127 is the middle. So you can think of the difference between hitting a djembe in the center of the drum head and on the edge. If it's too boomy or you want to emphasize brighter tones, you can use the low cut filter. Then you have a pitch envelope amount and decay. So if we bring up the pitch decay here and increase the amount of pitch envelope, and this is a bipolar control. And then you have a polyphony control, so you can use the 2-voice polyphony or you can just use a single voice of polyphony. So this will cut off notes if they're still ringing out when a second trigger is received. And those parameters can be used as targets for these X and Y controls. So you can select various targets for the X and Y controls. When you find something that you want to control, you just press in the encoder. You can also press the blue button again to specify the depth of modulation that these will send. And so both the X and Y controls have CV inputs, so you can send them modulation and you can control them with the knobs. The mod menu lets you set a destination for the mod input, so you can use it to choke both the noise and resonator, or just choke the resonator, just choke the noise. You can use it to step through presets with CV. You can use it to randomize, and you can also press in the encoder to randomize your settings of Plonk. So this can be a good way to find a departure point to make your own custom sounds. Under the mod menu, you can also use morph to morph between your saved preset and a second preset. And you can set other destinations for the mod input. Under the config menu, you can change the gain level of Plonk. If you need to add gain or decrease the gain of Plonk to get it to balance with other modules in your system, you can adjust the gain under the config menu. You can change the velocity mode, so this changes the response of the velocity input. Accent is the default, so with accent mode activated, while a gate is high, Plonk will accent those notes. If there's no input to velocity, all notes will be accented. With velocity mode set to dynamics, a CV signal can be used to control the strength of the exciter, and with it set to volume, a signal sent to velocity will control the output volume of the module. And you can also use this to initialize to a bass preset or to send presets over USB. If you're interested in learning more about managing presets, be sure to check out our video on using Laser Mammoth. So that's a quick overview of the controls and parameters of Plonk, and now let's check out what it can do. So here I have Metropolis sequencing Plonk using the bell tone preset, and it's providing kind of a Spacey chime sequence. And so I have LFOs from Atlantis going into the Y input, and Y is set to control the object position. The other LFO is going into the mod input, which is set to control the noise density. And so because all of these inputs use attenuverters, we can gradually bring in that modulation. And you can hear more of that change in position when you have more decay. You can hear how smooth those changes are. Now let's say I wanted to use the mod input to transition between a different preset. So if I go to mod and I select morph, if you press the encoder, then you can select which preset you want it to morph to. And so if you hit the load button, you can search through and find a preset. So let's try it with marimba. So that was number 46. So you can hear with Plonk, you can get things that sound like real objects and not like real objects at the same time. So now I've got a basic bass line playing from Ableton Live. Plonk is set to the Spark Bass preset. And so in Ableton, I've set up some modulation curves. So I've got a kind of 5-bar swell that's coming out of the CC output. So let's connect the CC output . So now I'm using that breath control to control the decay of the object. And of course we can also use the Y knob to control that parameter, and that will blend with the automation coming from Ableton. I've also set up some stepped modulation on the mod wheel output from Ableton. So let's connect this green cable and get some modulation from that. So I'm going to connect that to Axe, which is controlling the low-pass filter of the noise of the exciter. I've set mod to control mallet stiffness, so I'm going to use an LFO from Atlantis to control that. And then I'm going to use another LFO from Atlantis to control the overall decay. So by controlling a bunch of different parameters with different rates of modulation, you can create something that's evolving and always sounding different, even from a simple short loop like this. So you might have noticed that a bunch of the Plonk kick drum presets are labeled as kits. And so the reason for that is that a bunch of these presets are set up to be 4-piece kits. You go into mod and you select preset step. If you push in the encoder, you can choose the first preset and then press the encoder again, and you can select the second preset. If the second preset is 4 presets above that first preset, it'll work as a drum kit. So for example, I've got the Mutamix set up to be my step sequencer right now. So we've got our kick drum as preset 1, and then if I bring up this slider, we've got the clap on preset 2, the hi-hat on preset 3, and the tom on preset 4. And then if we send a clock from something like the Metropolis, and we split that so we're triggering Mutamix as well as Plonk, this is tons of fun. And it's even more fun, of course, when you play with Plonk's parameters. You can also use Metropolis as your sequencer for Plonk, of course. So wherever you see a kit as a preset, that means you have a 4-piece kit that you can use for preset stepping. This is just so much fun. And if you load a new preset, it'll automatically advance the preset stepping. Yeah, this is just too much fun. So that's just a few quick examples of what Plonk can do, and I hope you can see the potential of this cool little module. And of course, I'd love to hear what you've been getting up to with Plonk, so please tag us in your videos. And thanks for watching.